Give me a moment to make sure that that doesn't happen. For those of you that are logged into Zoom now, you should be able to download the handout. It is currently in the chat. Go. Looks like I caught it before. Got the audio feedback. All right. So saludos, everyone. It's good to have you all here. As I said before, tonight's session is another lesson. And before we get started, one more time, I just want to acknowledge all of the work that Sam put into this particular lesson. We do have him in our thoughts as he is a resident of Ventura County and may have been impacted by the recent wildfires. Um, and just, I guess, as like a little added thing, you know, if you don't believe in climate change, I feel sorry for you, but it is real. Um, so again, the handout is in the chat for those of you that are joining in on Zoom. And for anyone else joining in on the live streams, I do have them going here and I'm able to answer questions. If you have any, you can use the chat function either on Instagram Live or on YouTube Live, depending on where you are watching. And of course, those of you here for the class can, chime in whenever you have a question. So let me just organize my windows a little bit. Here we go. All righty. So to get us started, we have a quote that comes from James Baldwin, El Único. For those who don't know who James Baldwin is, he was born on the 2nd of August in the year 1924, and he passed away on the 1st of December in 1987. He was an African-American writer and civil rights activist who garnered acclaim for his essays, novels, plays, and poems. Y aquí, como ven, la cita de hoy viene de James Baldwin y dice, la gente paga por lo que hacen y aún más por lo que se hacen, por, por lo que se han permitido hacerse y se les cobra de manera sencilla con las vidas que viven. In English, of course, in his native language, he wrote, people pay for what they do and still more for what they have allowed themselves to become. And they pay for it very simply by the lives they lead. So, ¿cómo les parece? What do you what is your initial response to this particular quote? Feel free to jump in.
Does it come with todo se paga?
Todo se paga.
Todo en la vida se paga. So be careful what you do or don't do.
You know, to a certain degree, I do feel like that is maybe what our friend James Baldwin was trying to say, that, everything in life we pay for it in one way or another.
Yeah.
But
Do I have
what
to?
came to mind,
Yeah, go ahead,
I'm
Rich.
I'm sorry, what came to mind was just like that you're also like they say that your future self is counting on your present self. And so I feel like
Mm,
um that's also like what came to mind when I was listening to you read this.
a good interpretation. Yeah, I think that there is yeah, like we have to, I think, hold ourselves accountable to a certain degree, right? That's perhaps one of the things that James Baldwin is trying to get us to get out of this. Abraham?
Just like Dr. Rose is saying, like everything's has to be paid. But in this term, it's sometimes we associate payment with like monetary payment,
Mm.
but sometimes payment is like the roads you take, the work you do, or the decisions you make. and the outcome is basically the result of that, how much you put into it, right? Or how much you didn't put into it. And that's how they say they lead, right? The lives they lead. So they take in those payments or not, right? Sometimes you come on short. Like I have only 50 cents. So you have the life you pay for in a sense, right?
Mhm.
So it's kind of taking responsibility also.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Como que sabes la lección, ¿no? Abraham getting all deep and philosophical with us right away.
I have to.
I know. So, qué más dicen? ¿Qué más piensan? What other thoughts come to your mind when you see this quote? And again, for those that just joined in on Instagram, the quote comes from James Baldwin, and it says, "People pay for what they do, and still more for what they have allowed themselves to become. And they pay for it very simply by the lives they lead."
Kind of like maybe you also I feel like it says you get in what you put in.
Ooh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I like that. You get in what
That
you
also
put in.
sounds like a Nike commercial advertisement. Good job, Jessica.
Well, they're not paying me, so so
Hey,
we're not
Nike, if
gonna
you're
reference.
listening, Nike.
Nike, if you're listening, that's trademarked already.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, but that's kind of what I see it. But I like the way I think what I like most about it, or I guess that if I'm like looking at it, like how can I apply this to where I'm doing is it's very simple. Like the life that I've led, this
Mhm.
is it's payment for what I've allowed myself to basically what it's saying, what I've allowed myself to do and what I've allowed myself to become.
Mhm.
I'm applying it to my life.
Yeah, I appreciate that you're taking the words and using it in an introspective manner. That's, I think, very important, um, and I think it's extremely insightful the way that you put it. Another way to maybe think about it is another sort of cliche sort of phrase of, no pain, no gain, right? You get out of life what you put into life. I think that's kind of where I'm interpreting your interpretation. Julie?
So I found this kind of curious that he would make this kind of statement because as an African American
Mhm.
who has endured a lot of racism in his lifetime, he knows better than a lot of other people how outside circumstances affect you. And you have no control over those circumstances that have profound impacts on your life. So when he says this, he's talking more and maybe a little bit more internally as a human being. Um, if you're been given this sort of like mountain of pain, and then you behave, you you're able to overcome it in some way. Um, I think that's an amazing feat for someone to be able to accomplish. So I think it's an interesting statement from him. Um, and they pay for it very simply by the lives they lead. I, that's it's a heavy thing for someone that's dealing with a lot.
Mhm.
So it's kind of an encouraging statement for people, I think. Um, but it's also a curious statement from him in particular that I trying to wrangle my head around.
I completely agree with Julie. I'm with you on that one also. For the fact that it's not just of what people pay for what they do, but again, what you were saying, that sometimes circumstances come upon you and you can't control that, like whether the slavery, the racism, and whatever happens. But also I was thinking even in a deeper sense of people who become ill with a terminal illness, and it's like, it's it sounds awful to say you pay for what they do. Well, it's not their fault if they get a terminal illness, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And so now, because, and the line that hit me where it says, and still more for what they have allowed themselves to become. So that still more to me means, okay, you got whatever circumstance you got. Now that I'm really internalizing it, but what are you going to do with it? Are you going to go in a positive way and make something of it, or are you going to just go down that road and just be angry at the world? So the next line fits with that, and they simply pay for it very, very simply by the lives that lead. So what life are you leading after whatever's happened to you, whatever comes your way? So I internalized it all the way I, from what because I totally agree with what Julie was saying in terms of, wait a minute, what about this in this?
Self-conscious.
Mhm.
I, I have
Yes,
something.
go ahead.
I think that's like from previous lessons that we've had here in this class.
Mhm.
um, I think one thing that's consistent that comes from writers, at least when we read some of their work, is they're always saying how like we as writers have the power to create narratives, right?
Mhm.
And to tell your story, and how the words that we say could be read by one person, 100 people, 1,000 people, whatever, but those words have power. So I think what I'm seeing from James is he's saying the lives, right? He didn't have a choice. If I'm not sure if we referenced it, I don't know if he was a slave or if he, we know he came from slavery, but I think what he says very simply, by the lives that they lead, and still more what they have allowed themselves to become. He didn't allow himself to become a slave. They may, or his family, or whoever his generation, a slave maybe for work, but they never enslaved his mind, his writing abilities. He, if he would have stayed silent as a writer, then he would have paid by not having his work out. But the life that he led is he became a acclaimed writer, which
Mhm.
was very anti-slave for what really matters, like your mindset, right? You can own my body, tell me what, but you're not going to control what words I put out, or how, my my story, my narrative. So that's, I think that's how I don't know, who knows, but that's maybe how he got through it. Because not that everybody has, life is hard, right? We all have, theirs happen to be slavery, whatever, but it's, I think that's what makes it so good, that
Mhm.
he wasn't a slave. Maybe slavery, yeah, physically, but mentally he was never a slave.
Mhm. Yeah, well, just to be clear, he was born after the period of slavery in the
Right.
US.
So like his ancestors.
Yeah, so he does come from obviously, a lineage of
Mhm.
people who had been enslaved at one point. Um, and in addition to that, like there were a lot of other things that uh, really made James Baldwin kind of a marginalized person, from his sexuality to him being obviously African American in the time period where the US was the most segregated it had ever been.
Segregation, yeah. But he could like
Yeah.
he could have let all that history silence him, right?
Yeah.
Continue to be a mental slave, but he
Right.
did. It doesn't
And
sound
I
like he.
and I really appreciate that a number of you are talking about that, because to me, when I read this particular quote, and I'll let you speak next, Abraham, but I just want to say, that when I read this quote, I think about how, this can apply to other people, but if you apply it to yourself and you use it as a way to sort of reflect on your individual circumstances, you have the choice, right? You have the agency to take the good and the bad that occurs to you and turn it into something, right? Whether that be a life of remorse, a life of regret, a life that is full of bitterness, or a life that takes on challenges, accepts challenges, and tries to make the best out of challenges, right? You essentially are going to always be presented with two paths that you could take in life. The bitter path or the path of, silver linings is kind of how I think about this. And the result is going to be that the way in which you perceive your own life, right? It might be a life of success in your eyes, it might be a life of struggle in your eyes, but it's always going to be the result of your choices. And so that's kind of how I interpret this particular quote. Abraham, and then I'd like to give Sam a big shout out for making
Yes.
it today.
Just to go, just to speak about like Julie and Dr. Rossi were talking about. Like I know it's his background. It's definitely one with challenges. Not that everybody doesn't have challenges, but I know he's really particular at the time, like Luis is saying. And just to like to put an example, I was watching this trailer. I haven't seen the movie yet. I think it's the first woman who was doing the JP, like the laboratory proportion, and so she's arriving to these white people's like full job, right? And they're telling her like, "Hey, why you all sweaty and late?" And she's old men, white men, right? And she's the only black woman at this lab, right? And she's saying, you know what? She's pissed, right? She's saying, because every time that I had to go to the restroom, there's no women for like restrooms for black women in the facilities. So I had to walk like, I don't know, like a mile to go to a restaurant to go
The
to the restroom
astronaut,
and then come.
the
Yes,
astronaut
exactly.
movie. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Exactly, yeah. And so that goes with
Excellent movie.
saying about the choices, right? That's the payment she did because she knew she could have quit, right? And say like, this is too hard. These guys are giving me shit. It's unfair as hell, which is true. It's unfair, but
Yep.
still she decided to show all the time, even if she was late and sweaty. She decided to walk that mile. So that's the
Yep.
payment she gave to lead the life she wanted to lead. She wanted to leave a mark on the history of like women and black women specifically. And there you go. That's the payment she did, right? So I think that goes with saying everybody pays a price to see where they want to be someday, or they are now, right? They already pay some type of price with the decisions and the on the work they put on or the work they didn't, right? Like again.
So yeah, Sam, I'm glad that you made it. We're happy to see that you're safe, in spite of being evacuated from the wildfire area. We're happy to have you here. And if it's good with you, Sam, we could, tag team it as we go. But I think we're off to a really good conversation.
Yeah, that's perfect. Just let me know how to plug in. I apologize, guys. It's just been a rough time for me and my wife. The wildfires were very serious, and we've just been dealing with a lot of stress. But we're safe now, and I'm happy to contribute here.
Yeah,
Our, our,
welcome.
our prayers are with you and for you from all of us here at Distill Arts for safety.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So San Juanita, and then I think we'll move on to the next section.
Actually, I felt a little bit like shallow when I first connected. I'm on my phone. Sorry about that. I don't have a computer today, and I wasn't feeling well, but I'm here. Basically, I'm, this. I think I can even apply it for now people pay for what they do, right? And honestly, I was thinking of how there's so many things that people don't do.
Mhm.
And we pay the price too. Sometimes, for example, if I have an idea and I don't act upon it, the price is gonna be, I'm gonna have to pay a price for that, right?
Mhm.
And then there are times when I have felt that I cannot share, my position on certain things because of that, the majority being a certain way. And
Mhm.
so I'm allowing myself to become what, oppressed, I guess, because I'm afraid, you don't want to, how do you say it? You don't want to, what's the word?
Upset.
Or yeah, or push buttons, right? Push, I guess that's what it, yeah, upset, right? Upset people. And so sometimes I've learned that the best thing is just to keep quiet, honestly, I don't know if it's because because I don't know if that's called maturity or what it's called, you know like, okay, I don't want to upset anybody, so I'll just like keep quiet, keep to myself. And then of course, at the same time, I am the one that feels like, why can't I say these things? Why do people freely say it, but I don't want to upset anybody. I don't know. I was thinking of that when I read this, is people pay for what they do and still more for what they have allowed themselves to become. So yeah, it's a very interesting quote, very interesting. And then it says they pay for it very simply by the lives they lead. And so, my life is, I mean, I'm not saying I'm bitter, please don't think that. But one time I read, and I don't remember this writer, but she wrote something like, what is it? I choose my celebrations. I don't know. You guys probably have heard that, and that's what she talks about. Sometimes I don't want to be upset, so I choose to live the life that I think is gonna make me feel, calm and relaxed. Yeah, I'm sorry, my son's talking too loud. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share. And let me mute because this guy's too loud. Sorry about that.
You're okay. We actually can't hear anything other than your voice, but um I like how Abraham put it. You could always look at it this way, right? You paid for your tranquility with your silence. Which that can that is like a silver lining way of looking at that choice. Um and I think that it's really important that we do acknowledge the fact that not all of us are going to have the same thoughts, the same ideas, the same views about a lot of different things, and that's okay. It's really, really important that we understand that in the end, we are entitled to have our own worldview, so I do hope that everybody here does feel welcome to speak their mind and feels like they have a place where they can express themselves in a way that is authentic to them. And again, that means being able to listen to one another, and hear where people are coming from. Because if we don't allow ourselves to express those varying viewpoints, we're going to remain in a bubble, and that is not healthy, and I think that that's one of the reasons why this particular quote is relevant to us now, and why, given the political environment, it's really valuable that we continue to speak for ourselves and to speak up in a way that is productive, right? That's ultimately, I think, the most effective way that we can create change is by having productive conversations with each other. So thank you everyone for taking the time to take this quote to heart and applying it to yourselves. I really appreciate that. I know that it made me think when I read it, and I'm really glad that Sam brought that particular quote to us today. So we do have here this funny little poem that I think I'd like to give Sam a chance to read for us, and maybe explain just a little bit about how this came to be. Go ahead, Sam. I'll let you take it from here.
Alrighty. I'm just a squirrel looking for a nut. You are a wizard, Harry. I'm a what? Glad to believe in hashtag Jesus. He's the best. From Fresno to Pomona, fuck the rest. Sir, yeah, I was hoping you guys would get a kick out of that. Let me read it in Spanish too. Solo soy ardía buscando un nuez. Tú eres un mago, Harry. Yo soy un qué. Agradecido por creer en hashtag Jesucristo. Él es el mejor, desde Fresno a Pomona, a la madre con los demás. Yeah, so these are just some random retweets made by Pentametron. And today we're going to be talking about interactive poetry, which in a general sense is just poetry that's communal and collaborative, either whether you know it or you don't, voluntary or involuntary, and I'll get to that. But it also involves technology, programming, Twitter, and just internet culture. You can think of it as like poetry mixed with like meme culture, un poquito. So basically, pentametron, which we'll get into in more detail as one of the examples later, is a program that was created by this poet named Ranjit, su nombre exacto, Ranjit Bhatnagar, an Indian poet. And he just set it up on Twitter to basically gather a bunch of random tweets from users all over Twitter randomly, and then just to create poetry out of it, converting it all into iambic pentameter, which is the kind of meter that we'll also cover today. Don't worry about it if you never heard of it or if you're not sure what it is, we'll cover it. It's just it's a kind of rhythm in poetry that's been established since like Shakespeare's days. It's like da 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 da. Basically, he took that rhythm, created Pentametron as a program, a Twitter bot, plugged that pentameter in, and then it just gathers these tweets from different users all over Twitter and turns it into that da 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 da. So just a little taste for you guys as we advance here into what interactive poetry is.
Yeah.
Um,
So
oh, go ahead, Luis.
yeah, so to jump in on this, if you may not have caught it, but this is in fact poetry that is actually written by a bot. It's AI essentially, and it is done in iambic pentameter, which, if you remember Abraham's lesson, this is another uh, like review of how it's meant to work, right? And the thing about interactive poetry, as is illustrated in this little write-up here, it's something that is relatively new. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like the freshest thing in the world. It's just something that we see now done a lot more through the use of the internet and other digital platforms, and as you can see, multimedia elements. But to give you all an example, I actually have a little poem that I wrote. Let me see if I can find it. I know I had it right here somewhere. Shoot. Well, I had a little poem called Cien Fuegos, 100 Flames. And that particular little poem, it's actually written on a sheet of paper that when you open up the sheet of paper, it's a little mini zine. It allows you to unfold one side or the other side, and you can read it in either all English or all Spanish, or you can actually read it straight across so that it's a bilingual poem, or you can even fold over some of the panels in the folds so that you only expose some of the lines. Each way is a different way of reading the poem that still makes sense, that still acts as a poem, but has that interactive element to it. And, in the digital world, that type of poetry is going to happen through the use of artificial intelligence, through the use of programming, as Sam pointed out. As it says here, especially if you use things like Twitter or X or any other text-based platform to share your thoughts and ideas, either willingly or unwillingly, you are probably, contributing to another interactive poetry project in the world. So when it comes to interactive poetry, it is something that has been happening for a very, very long time. And the person could even make the argument that the Japanese renga and its actual spin-off, the haiku, are the maybe some of the original forms of interactive poetry. If you're not familiar with what a renga is 100 verse poem, and it starts usually with one person who performs a haiku or a what's the other one called? Um, I can't believe I'm blanking on the name right now. Uh, but it does start with a haiku plus a couplet and then a tanka. Yes, thank you, Sam. It starts with a tanka, and then every following poet that contributes to the renga writes a haiku. So that is actually one of the original interactive poetry techniques that was used in ancient times. Later, eventually, with time, the haiku became a spin-off, and that's where you now have the traditional Japanese haiku because it was a sort of poem within the larger poem of the Renga. And haiku could sometimes also be interactive in the sense of it invites the reader to create a response in the form of haiku as well. So that is, for those who are not familiar, one of the ancient ways of doing like a freestyle cipher. Exactly, Sam.
It's a rap battle before the rap battles existed.
Yeah, more or less. Um, but yeah, so interactive poetry has been around for quite a while. And I'll give it to Sam here to talk a little bit more about some of the examples that he was able to find for us.
Alrighty. So the first example we have is, oh, you know what? Just before I get into these, I just kind of want to make a disclaimer that not by any means at all do you need tech to do interactive poetry. It's just kind of a more modern manifestation of interactive poetry with AI and programming and coding. But as Luis and I were kind of like just mentioning, it's an old kind of it has very ancient roots. So interactive poetry, don't let the name intimidate you at all. It just means poetry that involves community. It's communal. You can't have it if you don't have someone else to share it with and to build off of. Anyways, with that said, let's get into the examples. Taroko Gorge, 2009, is an example of interactive poetry that was created by this poet named Nick Montfort. He basically went to this gorge in Taiwan, Taroko Gorge. He was just enamored with the beauty of the place. It's a natural park. And he decided, you know what? I'm going to write a poem about this place, but I'm not going to do it in the traditional way. I'm going to use programming language to help me come up with a poem. So what he did is he took a programming language and essentially just had the language set up so that he could punch in like 10 or 10 to 15 different words. And then what the program language would do is take those 10 to 15 words and auto-generate a poem using the programming code. So as I believe Abraham or Luis was just showing right now, that was actually the code itself. And it just takes the 10 to 15 words that you use and generates the poem. And then what makes this interactive is that he set it up so that folks wouldn't need to know a whole lot of programming to do this, but basically you could hack his code. He made it hackable. You could enter into the coding and put in your own 10 to 15 words, and it would generate a poem for you as a spin-off of the original poem. So really cool because anyone can do it. You just need maybe a little bit of know-how, not too much. And then you can crack the code, put in your own words, and it'll auto-generate a poem for you. So it's just like interactive poetry of the 21st century, using coding, using computers, the internet to create our own poems based off of the work of others.
Quick
And
one,
it's
Sam.
more than just this.
Is that the people, the names on the right, what are those? Are those the people involved on the poem? Or what is that?
Yes, those are the names of
Okay,
all
I
of the
see.
users from the time that the original poem was made till now who have hacked his code to create their own poems. So if you go to that landing page, you can click on those and it'll show you what poems people have come up with based on the original source code. And like I said, it may sound a bit confusing if you're not particularly familiar with coding. I'm really not, the most savvy person when it comes to coding either, but there's not too much to it. You would go onto the website and then you can access the code, punch it in, and it'll generate the poetry for you. And on the right side will appear the names of everyone before you who's done it. So you can click through everybody's to see what kind of poems they've come up with. A lot of random stuff, but you can see the poetry in it because it's mind-blowing. But the code was created to generate poetic language. And that one is an example of like just purely voluntary interactive poetry because you yourself, as a participant in this, are deciding to actually go in and do it. Whereas pentametron would have been involuntary. You know, you're creating all these tweets and you have no idea that this little program is coming in, taking your tweet and using it. Little do you know, you've just become an involuntary participant in interactive poetry. This one, on the other hand, is you deciding that you're going to participate. So, any initial reactions to that, guys? What do you think about it? Pretty cool, right?
It sounds intimidating, to be honest with you,
That's
because I don't even
understandable.
know what I'm being honest. Um, so you're gonna send us a link and then we click into that, or well, I'll
Well,
just keep hearing whatever you're presenting and then see what the assignment is, and then maybe I'll get it by then.
I think
No worries. It's
it's
yes, go ahead,
important
Luis.
to just keep in mind that this isn't we're not going to ask you to produce a whole new code for the purpose of today's session. We're just showing some examples of interactive poems that have been created using modern day technology.
yeah, if
So
you think about it, it's like Luis and Sam is talking about. They're basically using technology for techniques or other ways people were using as interactive before. For example, people used to cut out newspapers to make poetry, right? They cut pieces and they put it into a poem, right? So instead of having the artists cut the paper from different people's work or thoughts because they're just writing on newspaper or some other form of print, right? They're
mhm.
using the tweets like somebody texted something on the internet and the machine has a code that's telling, oh, let's mix it this way. It's just basically telling the machine is saying, oh, I'm gonna mix this way and that way, and it's gonna take pieces from different people. For the first example that Sam gave us, the second one is more of the machine has its own thing, so you are the one adding. It's not taking too much away from like other pieces of work.
Yeah.
So with what you gentlemen have introduced to us, I'm really looking forward to what the assignment is because somehow it's got to be related.
You need a supercomputer for this homework.
And luckily you already came prepared with it. It's right up here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, to go back to my example that I was giving, this is actually an interactive poem that I created, right? You can see here on the screen. It's called Cien Fuegos. You flip it over, 100 Flames. And this is a low-tech version of an interactive poem. The purpose of this well, the function of it, I should say. You take it, right? It's a mini zine. This is just a single 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And when you open it, it gives you here some instructions for how to use it. And then you just unfold, you see? And when you unfold it, it has two sides, essentially two columns. Each side is written in either English or Spanish. And you have your option of either reading it straight across so that it reads like a single poem. You can read it from top to bottom, going down this way. So it's a separate poem. You can fold over one of the panels so that it doesn't show, and that becomes a poem, right? So there's multiple ways in which you can engage with this particular poem, this one single poem that I created. You can remix it using any one of these techniques here, and you will have your own original version, your own remix of my poem that I wrote. That is a form of interactive poetry, you see?
Louis, how did you even do that?
Well, the way that I did this was, of course, I wrote the poem first, and then using different folding techniques, I tried to find one that worked the best for giving people their own unique way of interacting with this particular poem. I've even used that same technique, actually, to create,
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
yeah, it's pretty cool. I have
Who taught
also,
you how to do it?
well, It comes from doing graphic design. So, having that little bit of background helped. But again, zine making, if you've done zines by yourself and you've just even cut pieces of paper and turned it into something different, that is also a form of interactive poetry because you're using someone else's work to create your own work. You see, so that is,
Nobody ever read a photo like that.
well,
So Luis, you're saying you're
huh?
using someone else's work, but you said you wrote the poem. So
Yeah,
you're
in that
using
particular,
your work.
yeah. So in this particular one, it's my work, right? This is my own poetry that I'm allowing you, that I,
Mhm.
as the creator, I'm saying I want you to interact with this in a way that works for you, right? This is again, I'm giving up the control and I'm giving it to you as a way to interact with you, right? I want to
Okay.
listen to you. I want to listen to your voice through my words. So, it's
Wow.
a philosophical way of
Through
approaching,
your initial words. Okay. So is
yeah,
that the assignment?
Yay.
we'll get to the assignment.
Oh,
We're
okay.
setting it up right now.
I have a
Dr. Rose is
question.
Oh,
panicking.
you're setting us up good. I'm telling you.
Is this like
Yes.
would those things that we used to do like in elementary school where you fold a bunch of different things and you fold them out like who you gonna
Yeah.
marry,
Number
what are you gonna
number
be?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yeah.
7.
Okay. Is that a version of that? Is that an
Something
interactive
kind of like that, yeah.
Yeah, look, Abraham made
Abraham?
one.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same concept. Yeah, it's just you have a variable
Okay.
of different choices. It
Right.
depends how you put them together. It makes something, right? So that's what
Yeah.
Luis is putting. Like the computer has to do the same thing, but just does it at a bigger level, right? It has multiple choices.
Yeah.
Luis in there has like I don't know. Depends how many times you can mix it up. That's how many choices you're getting. But you are the one who's putting it together. Same thing with this, right? Which I don't know how to use, but I have it.
Okay. All right.
Um,
That's what I was thinking. Okay, cool.
yeah. And to answer Tori's question in the chat, yeah, this little Cienfuegos thing right here, this is a physical piece of paper. This had no bots, nothing other than just my supercomputer that's up here in my head.
Ooh,
That's what
people,
made it,
people, people.
right? So you can do these kinds of things without having access to a computer, without knowing coding language. Like interactive poetry can be both high tech and low tech. You have that capacity within you. You just have to understand how to unlock it, right? So that's where we are, at least right now, trying to introduce the concept of interactive poetry because, again, this is more of a philosophical idea. You see, going back to the quote from James Baldwin, interactive poetry is going to be the result of what you put in. That's what you're going to get out of it, you see. So, interactive poetry is really more about a mindset of how you want people to interact with you, how you want your voice to be communicated, and how you are willing to prop up other people, given whatever the constraints might be, of course, of whatever technology you're using. So, does that make sense?
Let's move on. It's
So
more
usually when we write, when we do an assignment, we put it,
Mhm.
in the Google Docs. So,
Mhm.
but this physical type of where you move it back and forth and up and down and all that, are
Right.
we going to be able to upload it to Google Docs?
You can. We're going to make it a little bit easier for you.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think we'll go ahead and skip over this last one, the last performance by Judd Morrissey. This is also a tech-based one. You do have, in fact, these links already available to you. They are in the handout, and I uploaded the handout to the chat earlier, and I also uploaded it to Google Classroom. So you can check out these interactive online versions of interactive poetry later and have fun with it. But yeah, we're not going to ask you to use AI. There's a lot of legality that is still kind of in the gray area there, which I think is one of the interesting things specifically about Pentametron, which Sam brought up, because it asks us the question of who is the actual author, right? That's again more of a philosophical question that we can ask ourselves when it comes to interactive poetry. It's just a way for us to really be aware of our power as artists, as creators. Um, but yeah, don't don't be afraid, San Juanita. There's no AI involved in the work that we are going to be creating.
Welcome to the
Um,
Matrix.
yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, AI can be little tricky. And there's a reason why we don't accept work that's created using AI for our zines. But that's a whole other ethical, philosophical story. Um, Again, though, just as Sam wrote here in his conclusion for the lesson, it's about being communal, right? It's about understanding that interactive poetry is collaborative, it's communal. It does require you to engage with not only the work that you put in, but also the work that other people put in, right? The input output side of poetry. Que no, Sam? So, um, you need to educate yourself more on the field of AI. Yeah, well, like I said, AI is a little a little tricky, and I don't necessarily have all the answers for you there, San Juanita. But just understand, just like anything else, it's a tool, right? And for the specific exercise that we're going to be going over, we have here a little example of what a couplet is, and I'll pass it off to Sam here while I queue up an actual visual aid that will help you all for the next lesson, for the next part of the lesson. So it's yours, Sam.
Alrighty. So guys, also comes to us from the day and age of Shakespeare. It's pretty simple. It's just two lines of verse, two lines of poetry. They're typically in the same meter, both iambic, for example, ta-ra, 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 followed by ta-ra, 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 the same exact kind of rhythm. That's all meter is. It just means the beat. Ba, 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 ba. And then it's joined by end rhymes. What is an end rhyme? It's just the final word that you have in that first line of poetry should match the final word that you have in the second line. I've got an example for you guys here. And then together they form that unit that we know as a couplet. Uh, I found this really cool classical Arab poet, Al-Ma'adi, and been reading his poetry. I really like it. So I thought I'd give you guys an example from his work. Uh, Many a grave embraces friend and foe behind the curtain of this sorry show of love and hate inscrutable. Alas, the fates will always reap the while they sow. Al Ma'ari. Y básicamente, señores, lo que les quiero comunicar con este término del couplet, básicamente es una forma que nos llega desde los días de Shakespeare y se trata de dos líneas de poesía que coinciden en las rimas de la parte final del renglón, que tienen que coincidir en los sonidos. Y esa forma una unidad que se conoce como en inglés el couplet. Y es lo que vamos a estar haciendo para el ejercicio que vamos a hacer en un ratito. Y escogí el ejemplo de un poeta clásico de la cultura de los árabes, Al-Ma'ari, y les voy a leer una muestra de la obra del Al-Ma'ari. Mucha tumba abraza a amigo y a enemigo. Por detrás de la cortina de esta muestra lamentable, del amor y el odio inescrutable. ¡Ay! Las parcas siempre cosecharán mientras hay siembra. Tal vez no suene exactamente como lo del inglés, pero la idea con las rimas finales es que han de coincidir para formar el couplet. Abraham?
Just to add up, because sometimes the format that you guys see on the screen, it's so we can have Spanish and English. So when you see a couplet here, for especially for the bottom part of love and hate, incurable, alas, that little part on the bottom is just the part that should have continued after a while. So it's still the same line, but just because of the space, Luis moved it. That's why we have that little space. So that means still a couplet, two lines, okay? Just making sure.
Yes.
Same thing with the Spanish. Spanish a little more, you can see it more because Spanish sometimes is longer than English. So yeah, that's also one line. Mucha tumba Habrá amigo y a enemigo. Esa es una sola línea, ¿ok? Nada más para que no se vayan a confundir. Pero couple ya, como dice Sam, nada más 2 líneas.
Ujú.
Gracias.
Para estar claro, en español se llama un dístico. El couplet in
Please,
Spanish
English,
is
English,
dístico.
English.
And
I didn't understand Spanish. Thank you.
That's why I just said for the people that are following along in Spanish, because Sam wasn't calling it the correct word in Spanish, it's called a dístico. So in Spanish,
Disculpe, señora, se me fue la onda con eso. Como que se me hizo difícil leerlo.
Oh, that's a good
no hay
one.
problema. But yes, we are talking about couplets. And if it helps, think of the word couple, right? It's usually two people or two things. You know, when I say I'm grabbing a couple of zines, I'm talking about two zines, right? So two. Or
you
if
guys are a
you are,
sweet couple.
yeah. Or if you're talking about in the Latin prefixes die, that's two, right? Dístico, dos. So, um, and yes, as Abraham pointed out, the for typography, this is in fact a way to represent a line that goes beyond the margins. So, is there any questions so far? No?
I have a
All right.
question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jess.
Does it have to be in the iambic, does it have to be 10 syllables?
Iambic pentameter.
Yeah,
No, I think for the purpose of this particular exercise, we are not going to go with iambic pentameter.
okay.
Couplets is just a general term for two lines, usually that rhyme at the end. Yeah. So
But
to
if you
give
want to
you
do
an
it
ex
iambic,
¿Qué
go for
pasó?
it.
Oh
But if you
yeah,
want to do it iambic pentameter, go for it.
yeah. You want to challenge yourself, you're more than welcome to do so. For this exercise, I want to show you actually something that was developed by Abraham to really, I think, drive home what the exercise is meant to look like for you. And at the very end of the handout, you'll see that I provided something very similar to this for you. So you can print out the handout and you can write it by hand. And you can then either take a photo of it or you can scan it if you have access to a scanner. And that's what you can use to turn it in at the end of this week. But Abraham, I'd like to give you a chance now to kind of, I guess, read your poem, quote unquote, for us.
Oh, do you have the you have to add the lines?
Oh, wait.
Yeah. Yeah. And for this,
So,
I think we can just ask people to choose. Like, once you open all the lines, we'll get to it.
all right. So you
Yeah.
want to
Just
start off then with the first line there?
oh yeah, sure. I'll start with the first line, and the second person who's gonna read from you guys, I'm gonna choose the second line out of the options that we're gonna provide. Okay. So if I didn't join the basketball team,
A, I would have never dreamed of a championship. Or B, instead, I stayed home watching documentaries.
so which line do you want, Luis, to go for? That's your choice. That's the
Oh,
interactive part.
I say we go, well, I would have stayed home watching documentaries.
Okay. So you get the other two bottom ones. Let's open them and leave somebody else. Sam, you want to go for the next options since you're here?
Yeah, let's do it. A ver, ¿qué son? Bought a camera and shot everything I saw. Or número dos, I got a library card and many science books. I go with the first one. I bought a camera and shot everything I saw.
Okay, Luis, open the next chakra.
Ahí está.
Okay, so I guess you can choose who wants to go next, Luis.
I have a question, Abraham.
Uh-huh.
So these answers are still pertaining to the first
Yes.
first comment that you made. If I didn't join the basketball team,
Uh-huh. Then Luis
All of
went
these are
for
connected to those. Is that what you're
yes,
saying?
yes. So just because you have a good question, you're gonna choose the next answer. Which one? You have two choices.
If I didn't join the
Uh,
basketball team, um,
So
uh,
yeah, so
um,
where we're at, right? Sam
today,
chose. Yeah, so after I bought a camera and
mhm,
shot everything I saw, these are the two resulting
man,
choices.
you can follow my post these days. Okay, today I travel the world. You can follow my posts.
there you go. So what you
Yeah,
guys see
good
is
actually.
it's as Baldwin's saying, right? We have all these choices, and
Yes.
the result is the last one, right? Like where we at or who we want to be is the result of all those payments, right? All those choices and work that we made. In this case, we start with if I join the basketball team, then Luis decided instead I stay home watching documentaries. And then Sam chose, okay, I bought a camera and shot everything I saw. And then we have Dr. Rosie who chose, today I travel the world. You can follow my post. So that's the actual poem, those choices that you guys made during the
Abraham,
class.
excuse me.
And Luis, you can open the rest one so they can see, like, if you guys chose the other
More
ones, there will
options.
be more options. And San Juanita?
I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand. It's just that I knew this was gonna happen.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
So what if the other one would have been chosen?
Exactly. There
Because
you
if
go.
people
Opens the
that
next ones.
like these
And
days
again,
I
these ones, we just didn't open them, but they were already open. Like, if you guys want to choose and just follow whichever choice you want.
because we know you, Abraham.
Mhm.
I see that the ones that were chosen. But let's say somebody doesn't know you and they choose these days I shoot for fashion. So do I have to know you to choose
Nope.
the other one?
This is kind of the first dilemma is if I didn't join the basketball team, and that because I was watching a old anime that I like about basketball, so I decided to start with that as a question. I never joined the basketball team. I was good, but I never joined the basketball team. But those are the things that I think, oh, those things would have done, right? Like what ifs. This is the what ifs, and then all the choices will start branching out because every decision takes you to a different path, right? And as a reader, you can choose the path, right? In this case.
Another way to think about this is um, for those that are familiar with them, there used to be a series of books that were the choose your own adventure books, right? You would read up to a certain amount of pages, and then at the bottom of the page, you would have a choice. You'd be presented with a choice. If you chose A, then you continue reading the story either on the next page or a couple of pages later. If you chose option B, then you would, continue reading many pages after, and your story would change based on what your choices were. In current day narrative telling, storytelling, you can even find that on Netflix. Netflix has select your own adventure uh, shows where you can select which next episode you watch based on what the options are presented at the end of the particular episode. So this is a choose your own adventure poem, or as Abraham called it, a what if poem. So again, if I didn't join the basketball team, I would have never dreamt of a championship. And we learned of hard work and we won. Now I shoot hoops with Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid, right? Or we gave it our best and we lost. And as a result of losing, I learned a no is a yes in the making. Or I took it hard, stole a truck, and now I'm on the run, right? So these are the multiple ways in which we as authors ourselves, as people interacting with the poem, we can end on various results, you see. So that is the purpose of this particular poem. And it's another version of something like this, right? Where you can give people now an option using your words to come up with their own poem. Does
Yeah,
that
and
make
another
sense?
level, the interaction that it has. It has, you see all the questions that I provided myself as a writer. but I also left empty spaces. You feel like, oh, I don't like your choices. I want to have my own choices. So the bottom ones, the lines that you see are other choices that you could have made, right? That will be option C in a way, right? And C will open other options. Another thing to notice is that the more options you put, the more branches you're going to have, right? So at this point, we left it at like 3 sections in a way, right? Because it gets like out of control after that.
Yeah.
Especially the pages wise.
Yeah. And like I said, if we go back to the handout that was uploaded, you have here, an example of what couplets are. And then once you go back to here, you'll see, of course, your homework is going to be to create your own what if interactive poem, again, made of couplets. And to make your life a little bit easier, I actually created for you a little template that you can use. You can download the handout, you can print the handout, and then by hand, you can write your couplets. So here, this first space, you'll write your first couplets, or I'm sorry, your first action, right? So this is the origin.
The what
In
if,
Abraham's case, in Abraham's case, if he hadn't signed up to play basketball, and then these are the resulting options. All right. So this is the first couplet, second couplet. And if you want to, you can also leave your own blank spaces for others to choose their own path and add to your poem. With
yeah,
your second options here, you would then be responsible for creating the final options.
I
In
think as
these,
a class we can do this as an exercise. Do you guys want to start? Who wants to start with what if? I think that's a good question, right? Or should
yeah,
we name one? All right. Let's see.
yeah,
I think
somebody should go
Jessica.
ahead
Jessica's
first.
pretty good at this. Oh, you want to do? Julie had her hand up, so you want to start with it?
All right.
Sorry, you're on mute. You had to unmute yourself.
I'm
There you
cheating
go.
a little bit because I wrote something similar to this in one of my other classes. So anyway, years ago, I had a female dog that I did not spay. Is that,
So
you want
do
me to
you
just
want
have
to?
a
So do you
quick
want to
question?
put the question of what if I spayed my dog or not? Is that how you want to go with it?
Yeah, so then the next thing I wrote was this was a problem because female dogs go into heat every 6 months. And that dog would mate with any dog in the Tri-County area. So, and it just kind of goes, on and on about this dog getting around. And yeah, and then also about a pedigree and yeah. Do I have to keep going?
No, what I mean is like I think a good way to start is more of a question. I think it
Oh,
opens more of a way for people to connect with what the next line is.
I
okay.
got
What if
one.
I didn't spay my dog, or what if I did, right? Kind of thing. And then you have a bunch of results out of it. And I think in this case, we as a class we're gonna choose the next one. This is out of your control now, like right? This is the interactive part of it. Now we're gonna let the rest of the people decide what's gonna happen to your dog.
Okay. Okay, I
So
take it back
too late. This dog is
Wait,
ours.
then.
it's been committed.
Somebody else go.
I see you have your hand raised, Elena. Did you have a question?
Yes, I did. I think not being sick is a good option.
Having the dog spayed is a good option.
Yeah, not being sick is an option. Like taking your cough medicine.
Okay. Yeah, cough medicine is good when you're sick. Uh,
Yes.
to answer Tori's question, do we need to begin with what if whenever we begin an exercise like this? For the
Yes.
sake of this particular poem, I think it would work to ask yourself, like, if this, then that, right? Or what if, right?
Yes.
What if I didn't go to school today? Or what if I did spay my dog? What would be the
Yeah.
result in response to this first original statement. So yeah, it could help if you start with the what if idea and then kind of reach a logical conclusion from there.
So we need to write it
Okay.
as what if, or do we leave it as years ago
What?
I didn't spay my dog?
What if?
I'm sorry. I couldn't hear Elena. Someone else was speaking. So please raise your hand if you have something to add, okay? Dr. Rosie, you were saying?
I was saying that wh- do we need to go with what if I didn't spay my dog, or do we go with the way it's written? Years ago, I didn't spay my dog.
Well,
Again, with the is there a question? Do we do it with we start it with a question, or do we start it with a comment?
you are starting with this idea right here. Years ago, I didn't spay my dog.
Okay,
That's
so it
going to be our,
doesn't have to be a question. It does
it
that
doesn't,
first line doesn't have to be a question.
right?
The,
So,
the only
but
thing
you
is that
would
the
be asking
question helps
yourself,
more.
what if I did, right? Sorry, too many people.
What?
So,
So like my line would be, okay, so years ago I didn't spay my dog. So my line would be, my dog is now a great grandmother.
Now you're full of puppies. 101 Dalmatians, right?
Yep. Okay. So yeah, so this right here, this statement, this following statement is the result of that, right? My dog is now a great grandmother. Conversely, however, what if I did spay my dog, right? That could be the results of this, right? So there's an alternate option now. And that's what would then go here in this particular line. So what would be the alternate option? And if you
Just
want to go
because I
with the
had
couplet,
Oh, sorry, it's the couplet. Yeah, it's gonna be a tricky part. But anyways, just because I had the same thing with my dog that I didn't spay her, so I think as a result, it's also my dog grew a type of tumor because I didn't take it to the vet. So
oh,
Right,
that's see, you have two lines
right.
too, so might as well because that sometimes that happens, right? Or my
Yes.
dog is, is a single mom.
she now is a tumor. So tumor, grandmother.
Because I didn't take it, something like that. But just make it into a couplet though.
Yeah, yeah.
Or maybe break it at bet. So we made the couplet. She now has a tumor. Might as well just to show that we have a couplet, right?
Well,
Ooh, I got another one.
so before I go on, just because it's a little bit
Um,
too long,
what
I can't
if
break it up.
you
Elena,
do
Elena,
not take your coffee?
sorry, Elena, I was speaking. Again, if you have something you want to add, please make sure you raise your hand so I know. Um, so again, here, this is a little bit longer. It's not iambic pentameter, but
No, it's not.
you have a couplet that says, my dog is now a great grandmother. And the alternate option is because we didn't go to the vet, she now has a tumor. Right. Now, one could argue these together are like a couplet. Um,
Yeah,
and
but I
then
think it
continue.
works more of as a couplet itself
Yeah,
because
obviously.
each one is going to be
But
different options. Yeah, that's what I mean. I
yeah.
want to get at that.
So, but is it starting to make sense for everyone? I feel
yeah.
like because there's so much talking, over talking, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure if everyone is following along. So again, if you have something you want to add, please raise your hand so I know you'd like to share. Don't over speak, okay? Um, and yeah, just give us a chance to get to everyone. So Jessica,
Does somewhere in there, doesn't it have to rhyme?
yeah, theoretically it would. Right now, I'm just trying to lay out the framework so that people are understanding how these brackets work.
Could we say
But
like
yes,
years ago I didn't spay my dog. I should have canceled that class at ping pong.
there you go. Yeah, that could have been a great way for us to start. Years ago, I should have canceled ping pong. There. Thank you, Jess. Now we have a couplet, as you can see here. San Juanita?
I'm thinking that maybe we erase because.
Okay.
Do you think so? What do you think?
I'm not the one creating the poem. I'm just typing what's
Well,
being
I don't know
said.
because there you go. So the line would be, we didn't go to the vet.
Mhm.
She now has a tumor. I
I
think.
like that. And then do you have a suggestion for the couplet that rhymes with that?
We have to. We didn't go to the vet. She now has a tumor.
Mhm.
But rhymes with tumor or grandmother?
Well, it should rhyme with tumor in this particular case because we're trying to create a couplet for the individual brackets.
Tumor. Rumor? I don't know, something about a rumor. She didn't go to the vet. She now has a tumor.
In bad humor.
Yeah,
Andaba de mal humor.
that vet was in that bad humor.
Or we didn't go to the vet. She now has a tumor. I was hoping my dog was a late bloomer.
Yeah,
That could work too.
baby boomer. No. Going
A
too
late
far.
bloomer, so she wouldn't be getting pregnant all the time.
Um, maybe that would work here. I was hoping she'd be a late bloomer. I think that probably fits a little bit better, right? So my dog is now a great grandmother. I was hoping she'd be a late bloomer, mother bloomer, something like that. Um, Theoretically, couplets can rhyme. Um, I think that's where everyone is getting a little hung up right now. They don't have to rhyme. So couplet is just the name of two lines that function together in a in a more contemporary sense. So um, that's I guess the best way for me to describe a couplet. However, for the sake of the poem that we're creating here, and as per the instructions that Sam had originally created for this exercise, we're trying to get the couplets to rhyme um, in a more traditional way. So I hope I'm not confusing you too much, Tori. But yeah. So as you can see here, we now have a total of 3 couplets within the various brackets. San Juanita, you have a hand up, or was that from before?
It's from before, but you know what I'm thinking? We
Mhm.
didn't. It's because I'm a little bit because the vet looks like too short, right? We didn't go to the vet. She now has a tumor,
Mhm.
and this put me in a bad humor. I don't know.
I like
This
that.
put me in a bad humor. Poor vet.
In a bad humor.
Yeah.
There you go. See, now all of you are starting to get into the idea of meter as we polish it, right? Is the lines that you wrote in the chat, Julie, for the poem we're constructing here, or is that from your original poem where I
Well,
didn't?
no, that's from my original poem, but I was hoping it would work with this, what we're doing.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Dr. Rose.
So when Abraham introduced his example, the first line was only one line, but here in Julie's example, there are two lines as the initial thing. So is that okay?
The class example. Yeah, in the
Huh?
class example, we were going with couplets. So that's why we've added a second line here to the original starting point, right? And as we've been going, we're trying to work on the lines a little bit to get them to be couplets. So each bracket will now have a couplet.
Including the initial statement.
Hmm. Including the initial statement, right? Julie?
So my question, because I'm not really understanding it yet. So we have the initial statement,
Hmm.
and it seems like what you're showing us is that mostly the initial statement precedes another statement that kind of goes with the initial statement in some way, fashion, whatever. There's no like abstract thought to the second statement. It relates directly to the first statement. Because when I write poetry, I sometimes will disassociate whatever I'm writing, in one line with a totally different line that has nothing to do with the first line. And that's why I think I'm struggling, because I'm feeling like this is very linear and that
Hmm.
you wanting us to think in a linear way. Is that the idea with this couplet thing?
Yeah. So each bracket will basically show us the result of the first decision that was taken, right? So I like Aurea's latest suggestion here that I think works with this one. So we begin, right? Years ago, I didn't spay my dog. Years ago, I should have canceled ping pong. My dog is now a great grandmother. I was hoping she'd be a late bloomer. My dog's partner comes to visit all the time. He always brings to play a lime. So each one of those decisions is showing us the path that it led to, right? This is almost like the timeline, right? Where the timeline splinters and it goes into this alternate reality where the dog is now a great grandmother. Um, and in that same alternate reality, the dog's partner comes over to play all the time, but they bring a lime, right? So you are going to be in some way thinking linearly, but also abstractly, because there's going to be indefinitely another option. There will always be another choice that can be made. Um, and that's where these additional brackets will allow you to explore those other choices.
I
You know,
got
there
you.
could be another result. Yeah, there could be another result of the dog being a great grandmother.
Yeah,
There
like
could be
I
another
think
result.
that the word lime really helped me because it's kind of like, what does a lime have to do with the dog?
Yeah.
That helped me a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. And, you know, it's, I think, helpful to not take this too serious, but it is in a way asking, what if this, what if that, you know, and we can explore these kind of alternate realities in a linear way while at the same time in a non-linear way.
Yeah. Okay.
San Juanita?
So basically, what you are saying is because we're doing the couplet about the vet and the grandmother, doesn't mean we're gonna use them. Is that what I hear? That we're gonna use the beginning and then the grandmother and then the
Mhm.
top one at the end. We're not gonna use all the couplets, right? Is that what you're saying?
This right here is just a class kind of like constructed
Be-
one. So you're going to be
uh-huh.
making one for your
Because
homework.
with the Abrahams, we didn't choose them all. Remember,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
chose one, and then but here it's
Yeah.
different, right? Because
Right. Because we're constructing it live
okay,
as we go. But this right here is actually Abraham's poem. So this is what Abraham wrote. The only reason why we didn't see it all up front was because we were trying to show you how it was constructed and
mhm,
how you could potentially interact with it, right? based off the choices that were being made. But this is, in fact, what Abraham wrote, and this is how you could potentially approach this if it was, say, printed in one of the copies of Conchas y Café. Right? This is going to be the thing that people interact with.
This graphic organizer is different from the one that we're working on. This one has like another.
Yeah, slightly different. This one is a little bit more complex just because Abraham wanted to make something that was a little bit more complex.
So Luis, the blank lines, they're not, he doesn't have lines there. The couplet, he doesn't have couplets there at all.
Yeah.
Because he left some blanks. That means
yes, he had blank. Yeah, he had blanks. I wish I could show you. I don't know how I could do like a split screen. Maybe if
You have to share the screen that you have.
I'd have to share my
Yeah.
entire desktop. That's gonna be too much.
Too much stuff going on, right?
Yeah. But again,
So
you know,
Louis,
like here, one more time, Abraham did this before Sam created the lesson. Sam decided that he wanted to challenge you to use couplets so that every line, every bracket would be a couplet. Now, again, Abraham created this before the lesson because Abraham wanted us to learn about interactive poetry and to use this model. Okay. This model is just one example of how you could approach it. Now, to add that extra little bit of fun, we're hoping that you will instead do couplets. You see, that's why we started doing couplets here in this example that we're creating in the class. And this bracket worksheet, this is actually in the handout. You can download it now off of Google Classroom, or if you logged in earlier, you can download it from the chat. It's there as well. But you can, you know, just again, have fun with this and explore all the different scenarios that could come from your original statement that you start with.
and Abraham did mention that he left those lines in the bottom so that if anybody wanted to add to it. So that was like
Right.
he did it, you did it purposely, Abraham, but with us, we're filling it all in, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. You can fill it all in. And, you know, I think it'll be fun to try to fill in as much as you can. And if you want to leave a couple of blank options in there, that's entirely up to you because again, this is an interactive poem. So you have the option as the creator to give people the multiple approaches to experiencing your poem. You see, remember, when I created this little Cienfuegos poem, when I created this little zine, I created it very, very aware of the fact that a person could take this and explore it however they so choose.
Yes.
So you can fold it, you know, and you can cover up one of the panels, so that becomes the poem. You can read just one side, so this is the poem. You know, you as the author have this amazing gift that you're giving the world. And again, you know, just to show you that I've done this multiple times, this specific little booklet, this was actually something that I was commissioned to create for Metro, LA Metro, when they were starting the process for planning for the river pathway that's going to go down the LA River. And so I created this little booklet where people can interact with it in multiple ways. So you can
Wow.
open this and every little panel has a different set of questions so that people can go through and write their own poem. And again, this is all just one single sheet of paper. It's just cut in a particular way.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I love it. I love it. It's cool. I wish that I could learn how to do that. Yep.
Yeah, it's just a matter of playing with paper, really.
What is it called?
It's just an interactive poem.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's what we're doing today. You're right. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can approach interactive poetry. We're giving you only one way, right? There's no specific format for this very contemporary, very unique way of kind of, writing poetry, quote unquote, writing poetry. So,
Okay.
um, so I feel like, we went over a lot, the assignment and the exercise. Is everybody feeling okay? Are y'all feeling confident in what we're asking you to do?
We're gonna go
Yeah.
for it.
All right. So again, your assignment, should you choose to accept it, is to do an interactive poem. I, provided you with the little graphic organizer that you can download again, and you can use that to fill it in by hand if you want to do it by hand. Um, I would actually recommend that you do it by hand and then allow yourself the time to scan it or take a photo of it and then upload it to Google Docs or Google Drive so that you can share it to your cohort. Um, if you are struggling with the sharing aspect, just email your cohort leader, whether that's Abraham, myself, or Sam, and we can help you with sharing it with the rest of your group. But again, you can kind of approach this how best you want. Ultimately, remember that the theme for this particular series is Los Caminos de la Vida, life's paths. So you are going to, I hope, present us with some options for the different paths that life can take through your particular interactive poem.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Is this, are we taking like any thought, or is this related to the poem we opened up with because it was like his choice? Like what if he had taken a different approach for his ancestry or different
And if you
thought
find
process?
inspiration in that, yeah, you can use that as inspiration. Absolutely.
Okay.
Or you can, apply it to yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
if
Like
I
with that,
had,
like
for
keeping that
example,
in mind.
yeah, like if I had gone to Cal State Long Beach instead of Cal State San Marcos, where I had originally been accepted for school, that would have been, there would have been a lot of things that would have been different in my life, So like I could reflect back on that particular moment. That what might be my inciting moment. And then from there, I could explore the different options that could have came from that. Or if I had chosen not to go to Cal Arts, you
Um,
know,
I know I didn't raise my hand again. How many couplets are we supposed to write?
I leave that up to you, San Juanita.
Ay, ay, ay. Okay. All right. Darn it.
This is where you get to be creative, right?
Yeah.
You are the creator of your own path, of your own destinies, and of the destinies of others, if they choose to interact with your poem in that way.
Thank you.
I love that, Sam. Think of this as your own little multiverse.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So if there
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thanks, Sam. That was a cool comment, Sam.
Oh, thank you guys.
are,
Yeah, if anyone needs any extra help, even if you're not in my cohort, if you want to shoot me an email, I'm more than happy to help. Especially if you want to take on the couplets, aquí estoy para lo que se les ofrezca.
yeah, igual acá. So with that, I think we'll wish everyone a good night. Again, if you have any questions in the upcoming days, do feel free to reach out. Aquí estamos para ustedes, para servirlos. And, we hope that you have fun with this exercise. There's, I think, again, no reason to take it overly serious. Have fun with it, explore it. Again, this is a new, relatively modern concept in this approach, at least. So there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of leeway for you to have basically your run of what an interactive poem is. So, que se la pasen muy bien. We wish you all a great night, a great rest of your week, and we look forward to reading your poetry soon. Hasta luego.